Welcome to another episode of the Beginner's Guide to AI. This time I'll tell you something about podcasts. And yes, if you listen to podcasts, I think you might be interested in the topic. It's not about podcasts that are generated by persons. It's also not the ones that I generate with the AI. No, it's the one from Google. You might have heard of them already. It's Google Notebook LLM. It's a tool that is basically created for management of information of all kinds, but can be used to create podcasts. Welcome back to another episode of the Beginner's Guide to AI. And on the microphone, it's Dietmar from Argo Berlin again. You might or might not have heard about the Google Notebook LLM possibility to create podcasts. You might even have heard how some people in some podcasts play that. And it's really nice, but you should do it. And I actually tested some of the things. I wanted to see if it works, how it works. And I would really recommend you do it yourself because there are so many positive things out of this product. But first, a background thing. Google Notebook LLM is basically a knowledge management system. It is like, I don't know if you know Luhmann's Zettelkasten idea. It's how to put knowledge together, to save your knowledge and to have it when you need it at your fingertips. That's the basic idea of Google Notebook LLM. Also, Google is famous for great names. So Google Notebook. And this really works quite well, although I didn't test it because the thing that went viral last weeks was another function, because everything you can put in there, nearly everything, you can make a podcast out of it with one click. And it's always a dialogue between a guy and a woman, and they talk about what you put up there. Yeah, and they talk about whatever you put up there. That's the great thing. AI does not ask questions on, are you stupid? AI does not ask questions like, are you stupid or what? No, you put stuff on there and they make a podcast out of it. And the interesting thing is you really learn something. So what did I try? What's quite obvious, scientific papers. There's one from my professor where I'm in the Munich project, and I never came to reading the paper really. It was a little bit complicated. It was like a topic I'm not so familiar with. So I started reading it, 1 or 2 pages, and I never finished the paper. So I put the paper into Google Notebook and it made a great podcast out of it. One moment, I will play something out of it. Now you see the interface here, and you have my interface, my German, my Google interface is German, so I get a German reproduction of it. But the paper was basically in English, and the podcast is always in English until now, up until now at least. So let's listen.
Okay, so AI, right? Everyone's talking about it. But today, let's ditch the whole robots taking over the world narrative. Yeah,
Definitely.
let's talk about something a little different. What if AI could be like your new research assistant?
Oh, interesting.
We're diving into a paper today that really got me thinking about how AI could actually change how we learn from research, especially in those fields that are all about human experiences, like sociology, anthropology, all those good things. So the paper we're unpacking today, it's called Distributed Interpretation, Teaching Reconstructive Methods in the Social Sciences Supported by Artificial Intelligence.
Sure.
And let me tell you, it's a mouthful, but it...
So you see, that is the paper, and that is what they get as an input. So it's a really high-level research paper. And what they make out of it is really something where we learn something from that. There's some theoretical knowledge and there's practical knowledge, and how AI can change how much practical knowledge you get once you study. Really interesting. So I don't want to advertise the paper. I want to advertise the product, and you realize how they really make a dialogue, how they go into the details. And actually, interestingly, it's like they don't go only into the details. They add details from probably Google's databases, Google searches. This is not just what's in the paper. They relate that to more practical examples. And yeah, the whole thing is like they even talk about that they in the me form, like me as a human. And I'm like, no, you're not a human. You are an AI. So yeah, but it's really interesting. So scientific papers, what comes to mind is if people don't read the stuff that you as a professor or teaching assistant give them, at least make them listen to the podcast. That would be something. I'm a fan of Blinkist. I don't have time to read all those great books, so I listen to this 15-minute blinks, the summaries of books. This is exactly the thing, just on a higher level, in my opinion, because it's more engaging. You don't stop listening to it. It's really this. I personally, I love podcasts that have two people in them, like an interview, or even better, interviews like really special. But like if you have two hosts, because they know each other, and it's more interesting to have different voices and different opinions in one. So that is something that they really did well. Let's listen to another example. What I have here is a handout. It's PDF slides. It's about optimal pricing strategy of a guy called Christian Wirth. He's really good at this stuff. And I just gave the slides to Google Notebook. So it's not more, it's just the slides. No background information, not even full text. Graphics and text on the graphics.
Ever grab a cup of coffee and wonder, like, how did they decide on this price?
Mm-hmm.
Or you scroll past a competitor's pricing page and think, what's their strategy?
Yeah.
Well, get ready to dive deep today, because we're cracking the code on pricing strategies.
You're in for a treat, because it's much more fascinating than just like figuring out the cost and then just adding some markup.
That's what I'm hoping for. I actually dug into the documents you shared about pricing for startups.
Yeah.
And one stat like totally blew my mind. A 1% price increase can boost profits by 20%.
Yeah.
So leaving you on this note that pricing strategy is really important if you do some marketing, if you're in a startup or another firm. But anyway, what's the point here is you just give them a PDF. You can give the machine, obviously, books, something like that, or you can link to websites. That also works. But those things where you really have a PowerPoint, I mean, you can imagine the situation. Some client or someone in your organization sends you a 150-page PowerPoint and expects you to go through that whole stuff. No, you make a podcast out of it in 10 to 15 minutes. You might miss something in it. I mean, you reduce, huh? It's like definitely. And this is also an LLM, so meaning it can hallucinate. But in my experience now, it's quite good at not hallucinating and and getting to the important points of the slide or the book or the paper you share. But I went on and shared other stuff. We have, it's a hobby project of us. We try to make betting prognosis. So for football, soccer for the people in the US. And we made our predictions with our tools and put the output, which is a simple like a ChatGPT output, we put that into a notebook here from Google Notebook. And yeah, that is really something. I will play that now one moment, because that is something. It's like, in this case, it's the Premier League 8th match day. And let's see what, it's always the same voices at the moment, but what they have to say.
All right, EPL fans, match day 8 is upon us. And you know what that means.
Time to place some bets.
Exactly. We're going to dive into this betting guide and hopefully unearth some winning wagers.
It's not going to be easy.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Looks like a real minefield this week.
Yeah, you've got some really unpredictable matches, some potential upsets.
I'm excited already. But that's why you're here, to guide us through it.
Well, hopefully I can steer you in the right direction at least.
So where do we even begin with a match day like this?
Well, I always like to start by looking at the games to avoid section.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Got to know where the danger zones are, right?
Exactly. And the first one that jumped out to me was Manchester United versus Brentford.
So the point here is we have that in games to avoid. We have that in there, but it really takes that. So it's nothing much that we give. Just give the output of a prompt, like games, like reasons for why we want to have those results or want to have those picks. And yeah, they make a whole podcast out of it. Great. Let's go on to, I did stop there, obviously. I thought, okay, if they can do that at Google, let's see what they can do even more. And I don't go into details now, but I added a really, let's say, scientific diagram, like those ones where you have lots of text in the diagram, lots of arrows going from here to there. And just with the diagram, okay, I had to transform it into a PDF because a JPEG or so, the machine doesn't take. But you put it as a PDF format and they really nailed it. And that is something, so you can even put some graphics into it. But we go to another thing. I put a script of my podcast in it, and it made a new podcast out of my podcast, just transforming the dialogue. So, but one thing I have to really present to you, and that is really, I was blown away. I have a manual of a smoke detector. And I put that in. I was like, okay, what's coming out here? And I am, like I say, blown away.
We've all been there, right? 3 a.m, sound asleep, and suddenly, beep, beep.
Beep, beep. That heart-stopping smoke detector alarm.
The bane of burnt toast and late-night pitching adventures everywhere.
You'd think by now we'd have invented a smoke detector that could tell the difference between like an actual fire and a slightly overdone bagel.
Well, until that glorious day arrives, we've got the next best thing.
We do?
We do. You sent us the manual for this, the i6500 OMS smoke detector. And let me tell you, this thing is surprisingly sophisticated.
Oh, absolutely. People don't realize the tech that goes into these little devices.
Yeah.
And I won't bore you with tech, but his laser has some distance sensor. This is crazy. I learned that from that manual. I would have never ever read the manual, but in a podcast form, actually, how they catch you, the hook at the start. That's really good. You have to come up with that for a podcast, and they do that just like with one click. So this is some examples, and you can put everything in. I would really say try it, because the quality is really high in my opinion. Sometimes a little bit cheesy because it's but it doesn't really matter. I think it has some really good use cases, and that's why I want to introduce that to you. As I'm also at the university in Munich down there in the teaching department, this is a tool for learning. This is like, you can make learning so much easier with this thing that you don't have to get all the information, or you have boring information, you put it in, and the same information turns out to be much funnier and much more interesting than you have it in the first way. You can shorten stuff easily and give it to the people. Yes, if you have university class and people are supposed to read 20 papers in this class, and they read the 20 papers and they understand the papers, that is great. But you have to assume that many of the students don't read your papers, and even if they read the papers, they don't understand what's the essence of the paper, or they forget it because, semester, half a year, or even a year, then if you study then for the exam, you can't remember everything. But if you read the paper and then later have a reminder, that's the podcast, where you have a summary of the paper you already read, that's perfect for learning. So it's not just the learning, it's also for, like I said, the people who read the paper and don't understand it. With the podcast, you probably understand it. That's like the first example I had. I did not understand the concept of the paper. It would have been much more than reading this paper. It would have been reading about the concept of the methodology they use, because I'm not in that topic. And this podcast makes the methodology, nice word, simple and easily understandable. So understanding is a really important factor here. And in the end, if you don't shoot for the highest results, it's like you have a PDF, you have a presentation, text, etc. Just give it to the people as a podcast, like in the firm, and it's like a new security thing or an update of terms. Just make a podcast out of it, and you'll quite sure more people listen to it than they would have the ones that would have read it. In the moment, Google Notebook LLM is in beta, so I think there will be some additions like different voices, different tone of voice, and different emotions or something. There will come new stuff, and the general thing, like I said, it's basically a knowledge management system, but for a small niche actually. That leads me to a thought that I did. It's not my thought. It's I heard it somewhere. I think it was the Hard Fork podcast. And what you have basically here is a product that is like the old Google style. It's not about making money. It's for a niche, and even the data you put up in there, it's not for learning. Google does not learn with the data you put up there. That's really important. So you are more or less sure you can upload everything you want there, and the data is secure and doesn't appear in the new Google LLM somewhere. So I would say you have to try that out. That's really great. I will put some links to my podcasts here in the show notes, then you can listen to them easily. And the only thing, you need a Google account to listen to them, but you probably have. Yeah, that's for this episode. Podcasting will never be the same. People already start making their newsletters into podcasts and whatever. So let's see what comes there. As the guy who makes an AI podcast, at least partially, I really love this because I did create the podcast here for learning myself about topics and that someone explains topics to me, in this case the AI. I hope you learned something today. And until the next episode, fading out, Dietmar from argo.berlin.